for being here. I really appreciate you like doing this interview. I love your spirit of optimism.
Thank you.
And so I would hope we could maybe talk a little bit first about how we can have a great mindset. Because it really, at the end of the day, we talk about politics and all these different things, right? But it comes down to the individual and entrepreneurship, and how can we have a strong mindset? Because there's so many obstacles, and all these things, And so I just want to like basically listen to you and soak up all your insights on that.
So main thing really is we're living in one of the most amazing times in human history, right? There has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur than today. And the reason I say that is there has never been a time where all of the companies that are currently the market leader are at the risk of dying. So in the next 10 to 15 years, half of the Fortune 400, 500 companies won't be around. And the thing that I love is more in the human history, there always been one technology at a time that came about, whether it's a steam engine or whatever, next set of technology. And you could see progress at a pace that people can get adapted to. It is for the first time where 5, 10 or 20 technologies all coming at, and they are all the knee of the curve. And the convergence of these technologies creating a massive amount of disruptive stress.
It's like multiple industrial revolutions.
Multiple industrial revolution at the same time happening. And the thing is, every 5 years to 7 years, things are changing so fast that if you are currently a public company, by the time you get to be a public company, you're ready to be disrupted.
So this is really happening, what people understand, because people hear this, and then all these people hear and they talk about this, but you're actually seeing this happening, right?
And that's
the world is accelerating
at a faster pace.
At a faster pace, right?
And what is really exciting is people used to think they start a company, they grow the company, and 10 years they get to do an IPO, and then the life was good.
Yeah. But now you have ICOs, you just
That too. But the point really is, by the time you get to be 5, 10 years, you're no longer a disruptor. You're ready to be disrupted. That means as an entrepreneur, the beauty is just because someone is ahead of you 3, 4 years,
doesn't matter.
All that means is they're 1 year closer to being disrupted.
Right, yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
So point is, every person, every industry, it doesn't matter who is there, you have a chance because the king is dying, somebody's going to be the new king. And you can be that new king.
And that's the mindset that you need to have, right?
And mindset is to start thinking about possibilities. So it's not about, how can a small group do that? So as you know, I have a company called Moon Express. We are going to be landing on the moon in the next 6-9 months. And when we land on the moon, sure enough, we become the first company to do so. More importantly, we become the 4th superpower. And that simply is a proof the next set of superpowers are not going to be the nation state. It's not Germany, it's not France, it's not UK. It is a small group of committed people.
Moonlandia.
Yeah, moonpreneurs, right? So the entrepreneurs are now going to do things that could only be done by nation states. Space is just one thing. Imagine healthcare, education, defense, security, all of those things are going to be now handled, or currency, are going to be handled by entrepreneurs. So nation states really lose all the power now. Yeah. So imagine, I have another moonshot that I'm doing in healthcare to make illness a matter of choice, making illness optional. Imagine living in a world where no one ever has to be sick because they understand what is happening inside their body at a molecular level and simply using the food as the drug. The things that they do every day, the right balance of food is to keep their body completely healthy with no inflammation, that means no chronic diseases. What if that was possible?
So
that's a mindset.
So what do you tell to if we think about the U.S., it has been such a great country, it inspired the world to reimagine itself, but now the current administration, it's very dysfunctional, and people you look at a lot of people, after the financial crisis, the rich people, have assets and hold stocks, and a lot of people if you look at the last 20 years, the incomes have stagnated, right? So a lot of people are sort of in this stagnation mode. So what would you tell these people?
So what I tell them is really simple. Administrations change, economies change, if you look at the technology, it continues to move at an exponential pace. It doesn't care whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president,
Yeah.
or whether it's in the US. You take the technology and you try to put a lid on it. The technology is amazing. It moves to the next place, right? So when you say we're not going to allow the embryonic stem cell research, it moves to China. We're not going to allow the CRISPR to be done on embryo.
It
It
goes
moves to
somewhere else.
UK.
Yeah, exactly.
It
It
moves
goes
to
somewhere else.
somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So point is, technology can never be contained. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it's going to go.
Yeah.
And all that happens is when you have a wrong state, it simply moves.
That's
to
what we're
the-
seeing now with blockchain, you know, the genie is out the bottle, you know.
That's right.
But it's sometimes sad to see the US like then falling behind so much. So are you still like bullish about the US? And
So what I'm really bullish is about entrepreneurship, and what I believe is that entrepreneurship has no geographical boundaries. Geographical boundaries are created artificially by states.
so almost like you just ignore the map as if it's not there, and you just like think more about where can you create the value.
And how do you find the like-minded people? Because no longer it matters where you're located. My team is located in 5 different locations, and we work together as if we are in a single location. Today we are in New York and Los Alamos and Mountain View and San Diego. It could as well be in a Belarus and anywhere else, right? It doesn't really matter. Money, capital is not patriotic anymore. Capital flows where the opportunities are. So when you talk about, when I am in Europe, people say European venture capitalists and people just don't like to invest in something new, and because their mindset is so small. And I say, you know where all of our capital for the biggest moonshot like Moon Express come from? China, Russia, Europe, India, all the places where everyone complains about that they don't want to invest. The reason they don't want to invest is because people out there are not taking the moonshot. And the reason they're not taking moonshots, because there are people don't want them to be taking moonshots. So it really is that cycle. Right? So they really fall into that cycle. Nobody wants to do great things because people believe it won't get funded. And here we are doing these great things. And what I found is when you go out and create an audacious goal, we are going to make illness optional. Guess what happens? It becomes a magnet for the best and the brightest people to come and say, that's going to be my thing, my legacy.
So that's how you attract the people.
Yeah. So when I said I'm going to make illness optional, the head of the Watson research, he said, I worked on every problem. That's the problem I want to sink my teeth into.
Wow.
Right? And guess what? He was making $1 million a year. Quit
It's
his
not about
job.
the money, yeah.
Quit his job, work for 100K. He said, I want to solve that problem. Dr. Helen Massier, PhD microbiology, MD, working for Craig Venter to solve the human longevity. She said, making illness optional, I am in.
Wow.
Right? So I was able to attract the best and the brightest people to solve a problem that I thought mattered to the humanity. Guess what happens when you build a team together? Every venture capital calls you. That team, they must be doing some amazing stuff that they came together to do this. The money flows and everything starts to become a reality. Because one single person said, I'm going to make illness optional.
So yesterday we talked a little bit about sort of like post-capitalism or capitalism evolving. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on like how do you think about money in general, like you know how you see money evolving, you know, and personally like it's something that is like everywhere, right? It comes and goes, right? Like what is your relationship to money?
So, you know, to some extent, money is fictional. It is only has value because 2 people agree it has value, right? The piece of paper that's written something on it doesn't have any value unless you and I both agree it's worth something. So people, when they say in cryptocurrency just a bit, how can it have value? No different than a piece of paper that is stamped on it says it has value, because people are willing to assign value to it, right? So to me, the large extent,
It's like a collective imagination.
collective imagination, and if you imagine it's there, then it's there, right? So we're creating this idea of value creation. In the beginning, people would exchange seashells. They would stand stones, the pebbles, I mean anything that people will agree has some value. And one could argue that could used to be barters, then the people started assigning an absolute value to it. But that's really has always been there. If you go back many, I mean, I believe even in the mammals, they have their own system of
Medium of exchange.
Medium of exchanges,
Yeah,
right?
it's always there, yeah.
Right. So sometimes you say, well, I get to be the king of the herd, in exchange I get X, right? So I protect you, in exchange I get this. So there is always a transactional value that these people assign. Everybody assigns that.
Social capital, there's things like that, right? Networks, how they build.
Yeah. So I think, to me, that is really how I look at the money is simply a mechanism for you to provide value that in exchange somebody values you, what you're doing.
It's an exchange mechanism.
Yes.
So then going back to the mindset on an individual level, like, what are some of the thoughts that you have? Because we talked, like, for like, the nation state on a big level, but like really for the individual. I saw some statistics yesterday, like, so many people are depressed, and like, it's really like illnesses of the mind sometimes, like being isolated in your own world, and not seeing the
So
possibilities.
this is very interesting you mentioned that. Depression is a chronic disease. Depression actually does not happen in your brain. It actually happens in your gut. So as you know, our gut is really an organ that contains trillions of microorganisms. And they are really the puppet masters, right? 70% of the serotonin is produced in your gut, not in your brain. So when you talk about depression, it's really the gut. When people are depressed, what do? They eat, right? Depression is actually a disease of the microbiome, imbalance of the microbiome. Alzheimer, Parkinson's, even obesity, diabetes, cancer. In fact, they can now predict whether even the cancer therapy is going to work or not work based on your microbiome, right? So to me, that is the kind of things, as we are learning about human body, imagine where the science is and where the practice of the science, the medicine is today, is 20 years, 25 years behind. Today the doctor still believes the best healthy human body is devoid of all viruses and bacteria. Somehow they never read the nature's memo that says you are a portable container for these microbial world. You're less human, more microbial, right? And you want to get rid of the whole ecosystem.
But there's still something about having an attitude, like, it's all about the attitude that you have.
Absolutely.
You're like an embodiment of optimism, whenever you go on stage, you inspire people, right? And so, like, what is it about that your mindset has that maybe, like, other people don't have? Right?
So,
and there's nothing like inherently, it's just like the way you think about stuff, and it's your attitude, right?
Possibility. Imagine what if. So when I always start something, I say, what if it was possible? So I can give you an example, year 2000, that is 7 years before Steve Jobs launched the smartphone. There is an interview I did with Leslie Walker at Washington Post. You can Google it. I said, one day people are going to have a phone that's going to have its email. You're going to have your email, your stock quotes, your contact, and a calendar. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, imagine if you can use your phone to make a payment instead of credit card. What if when you drive by Starbucks, you can get a coupon? And she said, not in our lifetime. That was 7 years later. Right? So my point is, lifetime of people is now 7 years of what they thought is possible.
Everything is possible is happening. Because the thing is, for example, with going back to the concept of the nation state, it feels like very far away right now, because it seems like, these like powerful structures, backed by a military power, like how can we really like overcome that, It would seem like we would have to do historical precedents, always there was a war, some sort of conflict, but it seems like maybe since we're moving so fast, some of these things will clash much faster than we.
Here's the thing, imagine what creates these economic powers, what creates these military powers. There's one thing underneath it, the money.
Yeah.
What if that disappears? What if the nation states could not control the underlying currency? Because someone is using a Bitcoin, they have no control.
Exactly, now we're going back to cryptocurrencies
Right.
and
So my
blockchain.
point is, what if nation states did not have a currency to control? How can they control military? Right? So my point is,
But that would be in the long term. In the short term, they would still have access to all of these things, right?
only because people believe that's valuable, the people do not believe they want to hold dollars. The US falls apart because it's not because they don't have the largest military. The military cannot be fed anymore because the currency they're using to feed them doesn't exist anymore. Right? So to me, that really is that mindset of what if, and all it takes is one person to put that magnet out there. That's it. What if we can make the illness optional? What if we can create abundance of everything that we value? So imagine if we can go out there today and say, what if energy is the next oxygen. That means it's democratized and it's free to everyone. What if the food becomes the next oxygen? What if everything we value is the next oxygen? Everybody has it and nobody values it. And what if that world could be created? Somebody's going to do that. What if I could do that? What do I have to do to make that possible?
So it really starts with dreaming and imagining.
Yeah. If you can imagine it, you can do it. If you believe it's not possible,
It's not possible.
it's not possible for you.
But see, like, what if you're like then self-critical and like, you know, like you don't believe in yourself and you have no confidence.
Then someone else is going to do it and you're going to watch them do it.
And that's the worst feeling.
So my point is, I always, when I start a company, when people say, well, I don't believe it, and I say, you have two choices in life, as you know, we all, every one of us in this world have a choice to watch the history being made. Very few times in your life you get a chance to make the history. Come join me and make the history, or watch me make the history.
Yeah, that's how it works.
So either you're a history maker or you're a history watcher.
So how do you make sure you have the bias towards action?
So by believing it can be done. And then, so think about it. I am not a scientist. I don't have a computer background. I don't have a medicine background. I don't have a background in rocket science. I started Moon Express. I don't have a background in medicine. I started the healthcare company. None of the things I do. I don't have a computer background.
So you don't need domain expertise?
No domain expertise at all. The biggest expertise that I have is not knowing what I'm doing. That allows me to refocus and challenge the foundation that experts have taken for granted. If you go to a medicine person, they've taken it for granted. You need pharmaceutical drugs. Each component of the body is the only thing they care about.
You're looking at how you can improve the system.
If you're an expert, you look at incremental improvement. When you are a non-expert, you look at demolishing the system and restarting it. Right? So my biggest strength is I have no expertise. And that is what I find it to be most refreshing is I'm able to look at it from a perspective that nobody has ever looked at it.
And how do you then work with people? How do you collaborate with people?
And this is what I do. I go out and say, this is the goal worth pursuing. And that all the people, you attract the best and the brightest. And the money follows them.
It really comes down to that. Do you have any daily rituals or habits?
So this is actually a wrong, everybody asks, and that's such a wrong question to ask. And here's why I feel it's a wrong question to ask. Following the habits of successful people doesn't make you successful.
It's exactly, it's cargo code thinking.
Yeah. How they think is what you need to follow, not what the habit are. So for example, Tony Robbins takes ice bath in the morning. You can take an ice bath 3 times a day. I guarantee you, you're not going to become Tony Robbins.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to become Tony Robbins by thinking like Tony Robbins.
Exactly.
Right? So follow their thought process, not their rituals.
So what are some of your beneficial thought patterns?
My thought patterns are, everything is possible. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. Every people will come together, universe will align itself if you have a worthy cause. If you have a cause that people care about, people will come together to make that happen.
And then resources, money, fulfillment.
Everything will come. But you got to believe you are the catalyst who's going to make that happen.
Yeah. That's so important. It's such a key, right? Because it makes a difference between success and failure if you don't believe in yourself.
Well, thank you very much for making this happen.
Yeah, like, so like, how do you think about the future beyond the goals that you have now? Like, what do you see? Like, how do you look at the world right now?
I'm simply looking at things. Once I solve the healthcare problem, what is my next bit? I'm going to solve the education problem because it's very similar to the healthcare problem. System is designed for one thing and needs are different, which is what happened in healthcare.
Yeah.
Same thing is happening in education. It was designed to teach you skills. No longer you need to learn skills. You need to learning to learn. Because any skill you learn becomes obsolete. We need to rethink it. We need to rethink about if there are going to be 10 billion people or 20 billion people on this planet, how do we go distribute ourselves into multi-planets so we are not in a single spacecraft and all humanity disappears one day? We don't want to become dinosaurs. How do we go out and create abundance of food? How do we create abundance of real estate? How do we create abundance of agriculture? How do we create abundance of energy? And those are all the problems worth doing.
Yeah. And then how do you make the choices for and decisions to focus on the things that matter to you?
You start with saying, here are the biggest problems. Which one do I want to attack the first? And
you just start with one.
And you start with one, and the thing that I look for is 2 or 3 things that I go for. Number one, God forbid, if I am going to actually what I'm trying to do actually become successful, is it going to change the lives of 1 billion people? If the answer is no, it's not worth doing. Second thing is this what I'm willing to die for? And if I'm willing to die for it, then I want to live for it. And the third thing I really go for it and say, when I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, do I know why I'm awake? If this is the cause that if I only had 1 year of my life left, I don't give a shit what people think of me, is this what I would be doing?
So then how do you make sure that you don't think so much about what other people think, right? Because we live in a society where everyone is knows what everyone else is thinking, right? How do you stay independent in your thinking?
So it's really believing in yourself. If you don't know me and you think I am really ignorant, all I can say is hopefully you'll get to know me better someday. But in the meantime, you have your right to have your opinion.
Right.
Exactly. And there will always be an opinion.
Otherwise, you constantly worry about what everyone else will think, and then you get nothing done. It's like Margaret Thatcher said, if you worry constantly about what other people think, you don't get anything done. Right?
Well, actually, it's interesting. I say if you want everyone to like you, it's really, really easy. Do nothing, be nothing, and stand for nothing, and then everyone will like you.
Yeah, but that's not what you want to do.
That's my point.
Exactly.
So then, in that case, you give up on everyone liking you.
Exactly. So then, you travel so many places. How do you sort of keep your mental calmness? Because there's so many moving pieces every day, right? There's so many things you have to prioritize. How do you meditate, or how do you
So
stay
my
cool?
philosophy is hire a brilliant team that's always doing things, and to large extent there is no single thing that's ever a question of life and death. Things will come, things will go. Everything is a speed bump in your life, and just because you see a speed bump, you don't stop the car. You slow it down.
So when there's obstacles, when there's challenges, you just you take the lesson and then you move on.
Take
Take
a deep breath, slow it down, and move on.
Move on, yeah. And that's how you don't then look at the past and become regretful of all the different things,
That's
right? Yeah. Well, I'd be curious to hear your last thoughts on how you think about a social contract, a new social contract that we need to develop for society now, given that a lot of different underlying paradigms are changing of how we operate things and what's possible, right? And so, you just in San Francisco, you walk down the street, there's so many homeless people, right? So what is a social contract that you imagine?
So to me, the best thing you can really do is to start thinking about solving the root cause of the problem. What happens is everyone gets so caught up on the symptom that they see. Doc, my stomach hurts. Let me give you something so you don't feel the pain. Not that I've solved the problem, you just don't feel the pain. So you see a homeless worker and you say, let me just take him off the street and put him there. You have not solved the problem, why they become homeless, right?
Yeah.
So the thing to me is, everyone, when they talk about social contract, they're saying is, how do I remove the symptoms so I don't have to see it anymore, so I can feel good about myself?
Right.
I focus on saying, can we solve the root cause? Is it the education? Is it because they went into the debt because of healthcare? Is it because of the drugs they are addicted to? And starting to solve the root cause, and then all of these symptoms will all disappear, right? So my job is, if I reduce the chronic inflammation, it may cause cancer in one person and it may cause depression in another person, but I can still solve the chronic inflammation problem.
Yeah, if you attack the symptoms only,
then you always
the
have
problem will always come, right?
So that's one of the things social contract really needs to be, that we're going to go find the underlying cause and we're going to go fix that one, right? Second thing is, as an entrepreneur, you always focus on what the world is going, what you want the world to be, not what the world is.
You look to the future, not to the past.
Or even the current. So most people who look at the thing and say, oh, is this glass half empty, is it half full? And as I look at the stuff and saying, is this glass worth filling? If the glass is worth filling, then it doesn't matter it's half empty or half full. And if it's not worth filling, I don't really give a shit. But my point is, I look at what do I want this glass to be, not what it is.
And you make a very clear choice.
Yeah.
About essentially the path that you want to go.
That's right, right? And imagine in your life, you're going to have ups and downs. So I look at the life and saying, your life needs to be like your heartbeat. Heartbeat is up and down. And if it's stable, then you're already dead. So if your life is stable, that means you're dead for all practical purposes. You're just a zombie right now.
Yeah.
So I want my life to be my like heartbeat. I want that heartbeat.
And then you mentioned earlier like how important it is to have a team, you know, to like stay on top of all these different things. Like, so what are the components that go into building a great team, right?
Really, when you're looking for a friend, you want someone who's like you. When you're building a team, you want everyone who is unlike you. People who are filling in the gaps to things that you're not good at.
Yeah.
You don't want everyone to be strategic thinker. You don't want everyone to be visionary. If you have a visionary, you start looking for people who just execute. They don't care where you're going as long as you tell them to keep building the road every time I cut the tree. And that's just what they do. They have no idea what tree you're cutting, but they know they need to build the road behind it.
Yeah.
And that's really what the team is all about.
It's identifying like different parts that are required essentially, and then
and
you're building the engine, and then you're just finding all the people.
Yeah.
And like, what about the relationship that you then form with the people? I mean, is there?
You have to have a relationship that says every component of that thing is as important. When you're flying a plane, you can never say only one component that's important. If any component fails, the plane fails. And that's really the team. That means if one person fails, then everyone has failed. It's rarely the politics comes in when he says, I can succeed at the expense of the other person. When you realize if he fails, you will fail, then he's no longer about politics.
Wow. So then everyone in your life sort of has a function, right? Everyone is there and is doing a certain thing that helps you. And
they're all symbiotic.
Right, and it's not just like everyone, like, like maybe like a conference where people come together, right? But it's very targeted in that way. What are some last thoughts maybe that you want to share?
All I think is that go out and find your moonshot. Find out what is it that you really care about in your life and go make it happen.
And then find people like you to make it happen.
You will find
But for example, building a country, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm super excited about this.
Yeah.
But it seems like so far-fetched and it's so unrealistic, right? Because right now people are building startups and all these different things. But I think in the future we'll build networks. They will have more sovereignty. They will be just like countries.
It starts small. You create a small place and you start to create for example, we work, and you create that ecosystem that becomes a sovereign country where people are working, they create their own currency and they're working with that currency, and the currency is a gratitude. And you start to expand into second we work and the third we work, and suddenly these people are exchanging the currency, and now what you're doing is really creating a country within a country.
Yeah. And so then, how did you know that you wanted to be like an entrepreneur? I mean,
You never know. Entrepreneurship is all about solving a problem, and as long as you always dedicate your life to solving a problem, you'll always be an entrepreneur.
And are there any things you regret or like in your life?
Life is never about regret. The only regret you always have is the things you wanted to do before you go 6 feet under.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I always do the things I want to do. So I never want to have a regret that I'm 6 foot under. I didn't get to do it.
And then what are the principles that you live by?
My principles are really simple. Enjoy every minute of it as if it's the last minute. Dream so big that people think you're crazy, and never be afraid to fail.
And are there any books that you like to read and give out to friends?
Depends on really the type of every subject. I read different books. So when I'm looking at healthcare, I can give you the thing that I love: disease delusion. The human superorganism. If I'm looking at neuroscience, the brain that changes itself. Every subject. If you're looking for genetics, I would say read like epigenetic revolution, life at the speed of light. I read a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.